Welcome, everybody, to Vision Untethered Conversations with Inspirational Visionary Leaders. My name is Jill Simonds, founder of Savvy Strategic Partners. We turn overwhelmed founders into empowered leaders by building businesses that scale beyond a single person. We are a dedicated leadership team of fractional executives that are executing vision, increasing the business's value, and helping founder owners realize freedom. I am so excited to introduce my amazing guest today, local to me as well, Josh Nilson, founder and CEO of Keystone Financial Services. They are a fiduciary wealth management firm helping clients achieve clarity, confidence, and financial freedom through values-based planning. Outside of Keystone, Josh also hosts an amazing podcast, which we were kind of talking about just as we were diving in, the Wiser Financial Advisor podcast. Is that the name?
Correct. That's right.
Yeah. Sharing practical strategies and inspiring stories that help listeners make confident, purpose driven financial decisions. So excited to share that with the world as well, too, and potentially collaborate with you on your podcast at some point as well.
Yeah,
Welcome.
absolutely. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you. Thanks
welcome,
for having
Josh.
me. You bet.
Yeah, so excited to dive in.
Yeah, I've been looking
We talk
forward
a
to it.
lot. Yeah, for sure. We talk a lot about why and our why. So kicking off with that, why is it that you do what you do? What inspired you to choose this industry and what you've created at Keystone?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of elements to it. So where I got interested in wealth management and investing actually was through my mom. When I was a kid, I had my first job was I was a paper boy back when that was a thing. Right, I don't think so anymore. People run around in cars, right? But
Hmm.
yeah, back then, literally was like the paper boy throwing the papers up on the house and everything. And believe it or not, we were actually independent contractors. So we were not employed by the newspaper. We're talking like 10-year-old kid, right? So we were independent contractors, meaning that we had to sell. We actually had to go door to door to get all the neighbors and everything to sign up for the paper. So we were paid on
Hmm.
commission. We got a cut of it. It wasn't very much, but it was a cut of the price of the paper. And we actually had to collect too. Back then there was no automatic debit or anything like that. So we actually had to go to people's houses and say, "Hey, pay up," right? And sometimes people would. It was pretty funny too because sometimes you'd have to stalk them, right, to get them to pay you. So anyway, this is how I made my first money, right? My first earnings were from paper route. And my mom said, "All right, this is what you do though, is that you don't get to spend all that money. You're going to be smart. You're going to take some of it and you're going to go invest it." And so she
Hmm.
actually helped me open up like a little account. It was probably in her name at the time, but a little account and we started buying fractional shares of Coca-Cola stock with part of my earnings. So back then I didn't really
Wow.
get it. Like what? Like why can't I spend all my money? But that
Hmm.
kind of planted a seed, right? You hope that, right? I've got 5 kids. You hope the stuff that
Hmm.
they see and hear, is kind of planting seeds for their future. So that got me interested in investing. And both my mom and dad had pretty good financial habits, and I had talked about money. So that was good. That just kind of
Yeah.
the planted the seed. And I went to college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I ended up being a political science major. I changed majors like 4 times, and it's like I
Hmm.
don't know, right? And so I kind of forgotten about. I played Office as a little kid, all kinds of stuff. That's kind of like you look back, it's like, well, yeah, like from early on, right? You're
Yep.
almost like kind of setting yourself up. But
Yeah,
got to
it's adding up.
college, right? Yeah, I got into
Hmm.
banking. I worked at a grocery store, and the grocery store had a bank in it, and it's like, oh, like my friend went over there and he started making more money, and so I went over there and got a job as a teller. And this is probably junior year of college, and just kind
Hmm.
of fell in love with it. It's like I love this, and kind of moved up pretty quickly because I was doing, I was cross selling and everything like you're supposed to do. And then I figured out, yeah, you can't really make in personal banking, you can't really make any money at that. You're not going to, be able to kind of post college. You're not going to be able to
Yeah.
buy a house and your family and all that stuff. So I started talking to a couple of the guys that worked in that credit union, which now they're a lot more gals, right? Back then it was like probably 90% plus male industry. Now
Yep.
it's still overwhelming with that, but I think it's much more a lot more females are coming into the industry, and yeah, I've got a couple high school girls that maybe plant seeds, maybe they'll be financial advisors someday. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, I just kind of fell in love with it and moved into a financial advisor role. Worked at a couple of different companies along the way, banks, um, and then decided to start my own firm in 2010, which is a whole other
Mhm.
thing, right? Because you could be good at something, but being good at something and running a business, that's two different things. That's two different skill sets. And I didn't realize that
Yeah.
at the time. So there was a learning curve, right? There's a big learning curve, and it ended up being good, right? But
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, it's been fun. I mean, all along the way, I've kind of had a growth mindset. I think ever since I was a kid. And I think that's you and I have in common. I think entrepreneurs in general, that we all kind of have that growth mindset, sometimes to a fault, right? There's, they call it the entrepreneur's curse, right? Where like nothing's
Yes.
ever good enough, right? You can't like stop and celebrate. And now it's like, all right, what's next? What's next?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a theme we're going to be getting into, right? As far as like how,
Hmm.
you can be successful, make money and everything, but is that truly going to be fulfilling long term?
Hmm. Absolutely. Love it. Well, thanks for sharing
Yeah,
your story.
absolutely.
What is a pivotal failure that you've encountered? So you talked a lot about just bringing your craft into the world of what you're good at, financial planning, management, wealth management, investing. But then there's a whole element of actually running that as a business and
Mhm.
growing, and you've got more people involved. The firm is growing. What are some pivotal failure points, or maybe one along the journey, and how did addressing it shape the growth strategy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There'd be a lot of failures, I think, if we're all honest, right? And that's why we are where we are, though, right?
Right.
Because you figured out a way to get through it. One that comes to mind, and it comes down to culture, I think, within the
Mm,
company, is that
hmm.
there was about halfway through. I started the company in 2010, so kind of halfway through it. Um, the culture slipped, and I didn't realize it at the time, but the culture was getting really wonky, and I wasn't addressing it quickly enough. I think it was probably one of
Oh,
those where I was just hoping. I kind of recognized that there's some problems here with maybe some of the people and my leadership too, right? Of them. But it was kind of like, yeah, I'm busy, just hoping the problem would go away, and it didn't, just got worse. So it ended up being, I had kind of a big like uh, turnover. It was a huge amount of turnover, and it felt like a failure at the time. It's like, oh, boom, boom, boom. We lost, several team members. And after the fact,
mhm.
it's easy to see after the fact, right? When you have a failure. But
Totally.
after the fact, I ended up rebuilding like a lot stronger team, too. And I've still got good relationships with, even the people who had left before, but that kind of needed to happen. It needed to
Hmm.
happen because that's kind of what the company needed, is not only for different players to come in, but also for me to step up and be able to set a better foundation going forward.
Yeah. And that's just a continual hamster wheel,
Mhm.
right? Like it's
Yeah,
staying proactive and intentional with culture. As I say, like culture beats strategy. If with the
it
right
does.
people, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
anything is
it
possible.
it's the people. Yeah, it's the people, and then also the people have to. We talk about this a lot, is defending the culture, because you can build the culture, build the team, and everything, and after it's kind of established. I mean, and there's still some work, right, to keep it going, but then it's almost like everybody needs to be in a position, if things are good, to defend the culture. Don't let toxicity come into the mix, that negativity, things that just aren't productive, and sometimes that means somebody needs to exit. Right? So, and
Hmm.
those are hard conversations. We do that with
Hmm.
clients too. I haven't had to fire very many clients over time, but that's when I've
Right.
had to, it's been because of just a really unhealthy relationship. And yeah, it stinks like to lose the money, right, from somebody who is paying you to do a thing, but in the
Hmm.
long run, it's just not worth it. There's just too much brain damage, and there's other people you can do business with that are nice and right, probably better to
Yeah.
work with.
Exactly. Yeah, so key. We have too. And I think even more so a lot in this last year, just as our portfolio grew and expanded really quickly and ballooned, just moving so quickly. But pinpointing and learning from that. Okay, where are these indicators early on that we may have been missing before that don't align with who we work with? Do
Mhm.
they truly share the core values, and really can they align with our why and our purpose of why we do what we do? And if there's like any disconnect in that belief or hesitancy or just a lack of that growth mindset, I think we could have realized and pinpointed those pain points so much earlier and not been in
Mhm.
the position. Because ultimately, and you're working with, and leading a team of financial advisors and wealth management advisors who are getting treated certain ways, and, again, defend the culture, defend and protect your people. It goes with the clients too, and not aligning, because yeah, we've been in situations where, a client hasn't treated our people or our team well, and that's a lasting compounding effect for them being able to do good work and continue
Yeah.
to show up. And yeah, you've got to sever those early. So I can totally align and relate to that failure
Yeah, yeah, and
or
sometimes it's the
learning.
hires. Sometimes it's the hires that you don't make, right? That you choose, or the clients that you don't take on. Hopefully, you catch it early in the process, right? That you recognize that, hey,
Hmm.
there's some misalignment here. Again, of values of sometimes it's respect too. We had one earlier this year that they actually would have been a really good client, and we were actually even on the onboarding process at the time, and um, I was getting feedback from the team as they were working with her that something's off here. I mean, as far as kind of how she's treating us, how she's talking to us, just not
Mm-hmm.
just kind of very demanding, disrespectful, and so yeah, I pulled the plug. I called her and said, hey, this isn't going to work. Um,
Mm.
but it wasn't. I mean, it's not a comfortable conversation to have, but it wasn't hard to make that
No.
call because it was very clear that yeah, this is not right. That's the benefit too of being, once you get down the path in any kind of business and you're profitable and so forth, and you've got some pipeline of new business, it's a lot easier to say that too. Because I couldn't have said that 26 years ago when I got in this industry. It's like you're just scrapping and trying to survive. You'll take anything, right? Just because you have
Yeah.
to. I mean, and you probably even know at the time that it's not right, not
Hmm.
ethically right, but it's just not a right fit. And but you kind of have to, right, just to survive. That's the nice thing is kind of once you get over that hump, then you can get a lot choosier and make sure that the people you're working with really are right for you and right for the other people you're working with.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the a factor in scale, because the energy and drain that some of the hardest, businesses, clients you work with, that the business can't scale beyond, those start to become choke points of the
Hmm.
business's growth, and those individuals to serve more clients that better align. You just kind of end up, hamstringing, and they always cause way more pain in the long run, sometimes even beyond the point that you part ways, right? If it's
Hmm.
too long, it's like that's the damage and the aftermath is more than just financial pain and
Hmm.
burden of letting,
Yeah.
needing to let it go. There's just, yeah, there's so much of an impact from an emotional, yeah, emotional, physical,
Hmm.
mental
Yeah. Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's yeah. We would talk a lot about time management, but energy management, kind of emotional, like energy management is important too, right?
Hmm.
Because I mean, sometimes it could be something that doesn't even take that much time, but maybe it's somebody you're interacting with, but it's like it just kind of sucks the energy out of your day, and now the part of you that should have been able to show up for the next meeting or with your team or your family or whatever that is. Now
Yeah.
that just was kind of an energy suck that didn't need to be there.
Yep. Absolutely. What are some indicators for you as a business owner? Either you may be too deeply involved or that you've seen too. I'm not sure how much you're working with other business owners in wealth management planning and financial planning, but being too deeply involved in the day to day, how has that limited the company's ability to scale and to innovate?
Yeah, I think it naturally, and I've gone through some evolution on that. At the beginning, when I started the firm, in 2010, with
Hmm.
$0, zero clients, it kind of had to rebuild. Thankfully,
Hmm.
a lot of people followed me that I had known before. I'd worked in HP for a good chunk of time, almost 10 years,
Mm.
and so most
Hmm.
of our clients are actually from the tech sector. And
Yeah.
still are a lot of engineers, tech sector employees.
Hmm.
Yeah, at the beginning, it was me. I was doing everything from making coffee to vacuuming the office and opening the mail and everything. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of advisors, I mean, that's what they choose to do is just stay small. They don't want to add leverage because of the cost, because of the, is some level of brain damage, right, of managing people and so forth. So they just choose to stay really small, and that's fine. I mean, I think there's no problem with that. And sometimes I'm envious of that, right? On certain days, it's like,
Right.
gosh, that would be so nice,
Sometimes
right?
it sounds kind
Um,
of nice.
yeah, but I mean, when I got to that point where it's like I knew I was at a point, right? I had grown enough, and
Hmm.
I had had one employee, and I kind of knew that, all right, this is kind of a turning point here where I need to decide,
Yeah.
do I want to just stay small? I mean, keep things simple. I'm making enough money. I could, kind of do what I wanted to do and just not have to work as hard or as much. Or, and this is, I was, in my 30s at the time too. Um, so it's like, well, I had to ask myself the question 10 years from right now, looking back, will you be happy with that decision if you had chosen to stay small and not grow?
Hmm.
It was very quickly. Now I would not be happy. I would know that, oh gosh, man, there was an opportunity there, right? Where I really could have scaled and added a team and so forth. And it's not even about making more money. Obviously, that's a byproduct, which is great. Obviously, none of us are going to do this for free. But there's also kind of the element of challenge. I kind of see entrepreneurship as it's like that's kind of like my sport, right? It's that I
Yeah.
don't play pickleball or anything like that right now. Maybe that's someday down the road, but yeah, I think there's a level of competitiveness, and again, it's the entrepreneur's curse, right? Where you want to grow and
Oh
make
yeah.
things better, but part of it's just
Hmm.
learning and growing, and I've noticed that with clients too. Sometimes when people retire, whether they were a business owner or whether they worked for a company, there's kind of a tough emotional. Sometimes people don't struggle at all, but sometimes there's a tough shift as far as their identity. And gosh, there were a lot of things I was getting from work that weren't money related. Those were my social
Hmm.
connections. That was my challenge, my reason to get up in the morning. My friends that I went down to the cafeteria at lunch and hung out with, and
Yeah.
they're still there, and I'm not. And so things change, right? So now kind of
Yeah.
reestablishing social connections, all of that. So. Um, I don't know if that answers the
Yeah.
question, but yeah, I
Yeah,
think
for sure.
it's interesting to kind of look at what people choose to do. But I think for people that aren't willing to add leverage, then they're basically making the decision to stay small, or they're going to be
Hmm.
working 80 hours a week, and that's
Yeah.
not sustainable either.
Yeah.
So I think it's important just to really think and be intentional about kind of what are we trying to build here, and then what does the business actually need then? Does it need leverage? Now, obviously, that's the business that you're in, right? Is adding
Yeah.
leverage to businesses.
Right.
But if the entrepreneur tries to do it all, eventually it's going to be burnout. Or, I mean, even worse, it could be a situation where, hey, we're adding all these team members, but the business owner won't let them do anything, right? They want to be involved in every single decision. And then, they're just order takers, right? I think you're making your team not very effective then if you're not letting
Right.
them do it. Um, so, and in certain
Totally.
businesses, obviously, if you're a dentist, I mean, you have to show up physically, right, to actually do the
Yeah.
work. But that doesn't mean
Hmm.
you can't hire a bunch of other dentists, right? And you don't have to be the dentist like that does every single, you don't have to clean the teeth. I mean, there's a lot of other things that you could do to be
Right.
successful.
Yep. Know your genius and stick in
Yeah.
that lane.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's hard to say no. I mean, especially when you know it's something you're good at too. You could
Yeah.
do it better, right? And so, a lot of times that's where leverage kind of fails is when you're not giving stuff over, you're not delegating effectively. Um,
Hmm.
So yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you can also delegate incorrectly too, where it's just completely, and I've made this mistake plenty of times where it's just kind of, all right, deflecting, throwing everything to other people and no follow up and no measurement
Yeah,
of results and everything like that. So yeah, that's not very good either.
exactly. Yeah. Delegating requires still accountability on us that it
Mhm.
successfully, yeah, successfully makes that handoff and iteration and making it better. It's not just throwing things at people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I love, having gotten to know you, Josh, is just our shared fan. I'm a fangirl. I know you're a huge follower. And in practice with the Road Less Stupid author, Keith Cunningham. So I know that that's one of my favorite business books of all time, one that I refer back to. So maybe we can go a little deeper into lessons learned that, you having followed that in practice and being a part of his advisor groups, business owner
Mhm.
groups, and cohorts. One thing that he talks a lot about is how we suffer from stupid tax,
Mhm.
right? Because we skip things, we avoid things, we make a decision too quickly, and then we're backstepping. And talks a lot about that thinking time and the practice and discipline of having thinking time and reflecting often. Do you have a thinking time practice that's worked well for you and keeping that discipline? And from that, what questions are you asking yourself most often?
Yeah, yeah. So thinking time, which actually is the topic of that book. He's written several
Hmm.
books. And a lot of
Hmm.
people probably haven't heard the name Keith Cunningham, but a lot of people, I'd say most people have probably heard of the book Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yep.
And Keith was actually the real subject. So Kiyosaki, he wrote the book and obviously made it really big, right? But Keith actually was his mentor and was the real rich dad that Kiyosaki wrote about.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, Keith was a super successful entrepreneur and built up hundreds of millions of dollars of wealth. He talks about this right very openly at this
Yep.
point, and this is the dumb
Hmm.
tax rate that he paid. Is that and he over leveraged and made some mistakes, didn't think through, and so he ended up losing it all.
Yeah.
This is back in the late '80s, I believe. Yeah, late '80s, early '90s. So,
Hmm.
and then ended up rebuilding all of it. I think he's doing quite well now, but he did it through just being a lot more thoughtful, actually, because he realized, right, is a huge dumb tax, right? Because, I was just going on instinct and not really thinking through second order consequences. He talks about that a lot
Yeah.
of stuff that it's not just the decision, but what are all the things that could happen and where are the risks and what's the downside? Can I live with that downside? So
Yeah.
he's very open that he didn't have a full appreciation for that at the time. But he's been in teaching mode for the last several decades then since that happened.
Hmm.
And did a lot of public speaking. He still does some stuff now, but he's a little bit semi-retired. One of the things that he's still held on to then is he still writes and he still does what's called a board of directors, which I'm on one of the boards, and it's basically it's super helpful, and you can recreate this other ways too without Keith involved. Right. And I know through YPO, there are other organizations that have mastermind type groups, but it's kind of unique because on each board, there's 15 boards with about 10 people, 10 entrepreneurs each. And these are all entrepreneurs. You're kind of vetted. You have to be approved to get in. And they
Hmm.
want business owners that are kind of further down the path, not startups. In other words, they want somebody who um, is profitable, has been profitable for a while, upward trajectory, wants to grow. You've got a team, you're willing to spend some money. So it's all growth minded people. So you'll learn a lot from each other. But when you're in the hot seats, we meet 3 times a year. When you're in the hot seat, you get an hour and 45 minutes. We all meet down in Austin, Texas, in a boardroom, and Keith is there too. So he's the chairman of the board. And so you're
Yeah.
obviously, they don't have any official, leverage over you, right? They can't make you make certain business decisions, but you're playing that role for each other. So when somebody is in the hot seat, you're acting as if you were $1 million investor in that business. And so is Keith. And so it's
Hmm.
super helpful because you're getting honest feedback from other people that have seen your finances. I mean, it's like you're very transparent, right? You're giving them
Yep.
all your financials, everything in advance, and you're seeing it for other people as well. So it's kind of a vulnerable position that you're putting yourself in, but it's pretty unique in
Right.
that other types of groups that I've been part of. Not that people aren't vulnerable, but you usually don't see, wow, I'm seeing your P&L and L and your balance sheet and everything.
Hmm.
So but yeah, super helpful. I think
Absolutely.
if you have a growth mindset, and 90% of the people out there probably don't, right? I mean, they're just kind of content to do their thing, and they're probably happy. They don't have the entrepreneur's curse. So,
Yep.
for those of us who are still growing, I think putting ourselves in positions like that where we're open, we're coachable,
Yep.
and we're willing to really think through maybe what was a sacred cow to us in the past, maybe willing to make a change. And there have been
Yep.
several business decisions I can point to. I've been on the board of directors group for 3 years now. Quite a few situations where I was going to do this, and all of a sudden they're like, "You should not do that. Here's why." And so it's been very helpful to
Hmm.
just have myself in that position. So yeah, he's
Yeah,
he's
for
he's a
sure.
great resource. So yeah, I highly recommend The Road Less Stupid for any business owner or even somebody looking at being a business owner. The thinking
Hmm.
time questions that are in the book, that's kind of the theme
Yeah.
of it. There are lessons that he teaches throughout the book, and then he gives
Hmm.
you a lot of thinking time questions. As to my discipline, it's sporadic, sadly, just because I think we all get caught up, right, in the day to day
Hmm.
and taking care of clients and everything. So I
For
don't get
sure.
as much as I should. But
Hmm.
very, very valuable to take 20, 30 minutes and turn off the technology and everything and just focus on a few questions, um,
Yep.
and kind of come up with possibilities, right, on how to solve something.
Yep. Exactly. Yes, there's such direct tie-in with lessons learned and dumb tax as business owners that I learned from that book and that actually inspire a lot of just this conversation and podcast for Vision Untethered and untethering ourselves and focusing on looking out and forward, um, that go hand in hand. So I'm curious when it comes to involvement or over involvement in the business, where do you personally tend to drift out of your highest and best use as a business owner? And then what have you learned about
Yeah.
creating systems so the company doesn't rely on you specifically for everything?
Yeah, it's been a process. Yeah, again, the
Hmm.
business has been around for 16 years, so it's definitely been a process to get here. Um,
Hmm.
it's usually me trying to jump into somebody else's lane, um, right? That's on the team. We've got ten people on the team right now, including myself.
Hmm.
And it's usually me trying to jump into somebody else's lane, and I shouldn't, so silly
Yeah.
example, but right now it's this time of year, right? We're sending it for our out of town clients. We have a pie event for clients that are here, and it's kind of fun around the holidays. But for our out of town clients, we send it's kind of some gift stuff. And so that team, like, that, I'm not involved in this, right? They're all like good at it, and they have it all decided. They had a committee and made all decisions. So I
Yeah.
said, okay, well, you did this, right? And oh, and based on the size of the client, they get it, and they're like, yep, yeah, yes. I mean, yes, we got it, So, and they were kind of funny about it, but oh, I had to remind myself, oh, like, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Like they know what to do, they know what to do. So don't get involved. Go do your CEO thing and go make some money. So yeah, I think
Yep.
I mean, there's two hats though, because I'm still a practicing advisor, and
Hmm.
still have a number of clients that I work with directly. But we've got Jeremy, who's another senior advisor in CFP, and then Jen
Yeah.
is an associate advisor, CFP candidate. We're probably adding another advisor this next year as well. So
Hmm.
kind of think of it, again, the dentist. It's kind of like, all right, I'm working on teeth, and I'm running the practice. So that's two
Yes.
different hats, and sometimes it's really easy to get stuck in that practitioner with that practitioner hat on, because there's always something
Right.
else to do, right? So doing
Yep.
something like thinking time, uh, setting aside time and like shutting out the client stuff and just working on, hey, I need to work on the budget for 2026.
Yeah.
Right. Doing that planning for me
Working
anyway.
on the
You,
business and
yeah,
not
I'm
in
like,
it and in the
and it's hard
clients.
too, because
Hmm.
I think most of us like that are entrepreneurs, like undiagnosed ADHD. So to actually sit down and do thinking time um, or like working on a budget, that's like, you have to kind of like make yourself do it sometimes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Usually it's like the thing we're avoiding the most.
Hmm.
Or feel more productive, perhaps, or we convince ourselves and trick ourselves into thinking we're more productive in the things that are in it and not on it. But it takes so much discipline for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of that discipline, too, when it comes to shiny objects, right? There's always the opportunities and looking forward and looking out. Um, the book also calls these like shiny objects as seductive, right? But the stupid cousins of opportunity. I think he said
Right.
something to that effect is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they're very seductive and it's like, ooh, this could be really cool. It's an amazing opportunity. And we go down these rabbit holes. So
Mhm.
what's one opportunity you maybe can share that you chased and it ended up being a distraction?
Um, oh, there's been probably a lot of them over the years. I think it's really easy. Yeah, it's really easy to chase this bright, shiny objects. And then not a lot moves if you're chasing 1,000 things. Then even
Hmm.
maybe all 1,000 things will work. That's the thing is like with the business, there are thousands of ways to make a business work and so forth, but you can't do all of them. And if you try to do all of them, then you're going to do a crappy job at all of them. Basically, it's not going to be
Hmm.
very effective. Um, yeah, when it comes
Yeah.
to we did a lead generation program, and we've got some other ones we still do that work really well. But kind of jumped into one, saw an email. Oh, maybe other advisors are doing this and so forth. It kind of jumped into it without a plan. In other words, not really doing my research as far as is that particular service, what results are people getting from it. And I even
Hmm.
had kind of a warning. Another advisor friend that I had, we even talked about that particular program, and he said, "Yeah, we quit that. We were getting crap leads, and got no business from it, even though we were working it. And so,
Hmm.
but I think it was one of those where sometimes you can have hopium. You can be high on hopium, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, well we'll just without a plan, but yeah, we'll just hope that this works, and ended up, blowing 30 grand on it, something like that, which could have been used
Sure.
for something else. It made no money. We got zero clients from that. So finally, I did end up canceling. But again, it was a bright, shiny object. Maybe somebody makes it work, with that particular
Hmm.
program, but yeah, it didn't work for us. And we've got primarily a referral based business. And so the low hanging fruit is kind of making clients really happy and doing good work and then asking
Hmm.
for referrals, but also the digital marketing side, especially with the younger clients, especially maybe if somebody's a lot older, they don't care as much about the digital marketing side like this, right? Like a podcast or web presence, social media. But
Yeah.
yeah, these days, even if a friend refers somebody, we know because we ask. If somebody refers somebody, maybe a coworker, to work with us, they don't just, oh, hey, Josh, I want to meet with you. It's Google or chat now, right? I think people are using more of that to find information, but they want to actually
Yeah.
get to know you before they they initiate contact.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's important. But yeah, I think just being intentional about a smaller number of things and having a way to measure them, so you're not just blowing money and um, yeah, just having that
Yeah.
hopium.
Yeah. That's a good word too for it. Um, well said. Well said. A lot of, I mean, entrepreneurs, business owners are very emotional by nature, right? And just deeply passionate. And there's a lot of ego drive too. And so another part of the book is the ego trap, where, kind of that warning where ego can be the biggest profit killer. Um, where maybe has ego sabotaged you in the past, with the growth, with the team, with the culture, and what are signals that you can tell that your ego is actually driving.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think there's kind of an I know mindset that we all need to be
Hmm.
careful about. It's kind of like, oh, I know, and not really listening. Right. Whether you're in a board of directors or something like that,
Right.
or lack of thinking, kind of that
Yeah.
I know mindset
Yeah. It's more the
means that,
emotional, like
yeah,
gut
exactly. So we're just turning, yeah, exactly. We're just
drive.
turning off, which means we're not coachable. We're kind of dead
Hmm.
set going on this direction and
Yep.
not fully examining it, not questioning it. So, I mean,
Hmm.
there's a healthy amount of ego. I don't think you'd be successful at all as an entrepreneur if you didn't have enough ego. Or think about
Totally.
like an airline pilot or a surgeon. You want them to have hey, they
Right.
need to have enough ego, right? That you need them to have the confidence. But hopefully,
Yep.
even in those situations, though, I mean, they've got checks and balances, and
Hmm.
you think about the pre-flight checklist that they go through every single time. It doesn't matter how long that pilot
Yep.
has been flying or flown that type of aircraft. They still go through the checklist every single time.
Hmm.
So I think yeah, taking the time to really think and prepare and question and just be open to yeah, maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe what we're doing isn't the best way.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. Well, to kind of wrap up, um, thank you so much for just sharing your story and pain
Yeah,
points
absolutely.
and journey along the way. What are some practical steps that you'd suggest to our fellow entrepreneurs struggling to delegate and relieve themselves and founder dependency in the business while also maintaining alignment with their vision? Any practical steps
Yeah,
to get there?
yeah. Be willing to spend some money.
Mm,
I think a lot of
mhm.
times, you know, again, this it can kind of back. Well, I can just do that myself, right? Um, but there's a certain amount you have to figure out, quantify like what your time is worth, which if you're just starting out, and again, well, you might have to suck it up, right, for a while and do a lot of things. But once you reach a point of profitability and you quantify what is my average client value and how much is coming in and so forth, you can quantify your per hour time. And anything less than that, I recommend the book "Buy Back Your Time" by Dan Martell. Actually, kind of
Yeah.
walks you through that exercise, right, of really figuring out what your time is worth and at what point, at least financially, at what point it makes sense to add leverage, whether that's
Yeah.
adding a full time or maybe it's a fractional situation, right? And especially earlier on, which I
Hmm.
don't think of us as a big company at all. We're relatively small, but so it doesn't really make sense that you'd have a chief marketing officer. I mean, you need to have a much larger company for that to have a full time chief marketing officer.
Yep.
Or chief growth officer, but yeah, there are fractional situations where you can start adding that in, right, and adding that expertise. So I think
Yeah.
quantifying your time more than anything, and then just being willing to spend money, just viewing it as an investment, still having a plan. I've made that mistake too, where you just kind of throw people at problems and just again hopium, right? Oh, yeah, things will get solved if we just hire more people. The reality is just
Yeah.
hiring more people doesn't fix it unless you've got a plan. Adding more people actually will add more problems if you don't have a plan, right? That's a
Yes,
different situation. So
exactly.
you still have to be thoughtful as a leader and make sure you're really clear on what it is that we're asking these people to do. What are your actual outcomes here that you're expecting them to produce? And even if it means going slower and waiting on that hire until you really have that thinking time. Again, I've made that
Yeah.
mistake plenty of times over the years, as far as just throwing people at problems, and again, I just ended up with more problems when I do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, but being willing to spend money though, being willing if you really want to grow, having that growth mindset,
Yes.
not just like in your head, but hey, I need to reinvest in the business. I need to reinvest in myself. Some of these things are going to cost some money, but I can't remember who it was, Benjamin Franklin or somebody, right? Said that your best investment is yourself. Investing money
Mm,
back into yourself as a leader and entrepreneur, investing back in your
right.
people too, right, with
Exactly.
training, conferences, things like that. But again, being intentional about it, not just throwing money at stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Super key. Well,
Yeah.
Josh, if anyone wants to find out more about you, about Keystone, find a trusted advisor and expert in financial services and wealth management, where do they find you in Keystone?
Yeah, easiest place. And, we've got all the social media channels and the podcasts and stuff. But if you just go to our website, keystonefinancial.com. So we're located in Northern Colorado here, right? But I'd
Mhm.
say about 80% of our clients live here, and the other 20% live every place else in the country. So,
Yep.
yeah, we're happy to work with people on a client basis. The first couple of conversations are free. We don't charge anything just for that figuring out stage, right? It's kind of like dating. You're trying to see if there is a connection here, is the service kind of a match for what they need? And
Yep.
then the podcast, if people want to listen, is just wiserfinancialadvisor.com.
Great. Well, thank you again so much for
Yeah,
being here,
thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having
sharing
me.
your journey with everybody. We'll see you all next time. Thank you for
Yeah,
listening.
absolutely.